Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Cadence and I am happy to have you.
Where are they?
Today we're going to be doing a comprehensive, totally honest, unsponsored review of the new Lululemon Strongfeel training shoes. Let's talk about the shoes a little bit. So all of this information is directly from the Lululemon website. These shoes were designed based on the female foot for a better fit and feel. Over 4 years of research and development and over 1 million volumetric foot scans and countless rounds of wear testing to make these shoes for women first. They have a lightweight supportive upper that holds you securely while jumping, cutting, and lifting. There is low profile cushioning and multi-directional traction for any workout. And they also have a 30-day guarantee. You can put your shoes to the test, and if you're unsatisfied, you can return them for a full refund, either worn or unworn. They have a 6mm heel to toe drop, and they cost $128. So they are definitely a little bit of an investment. So I hope that I can answer any questions you have about the shoe today. So let's talk about what I'm looking for in a shoe and what is going to be included in this review. So a training shoe is meant for versatility. So that's one of the things I'm going to be looking for. How does it perform with essential lifts and weight training? How does it perform with jumps in plyometrics? And how does it perform when running? I'll talk about what this is and isn't good for, which areas it performs best, which areas I would not use it in. I'm also going to be talking about comfort and fit, sizing, as well as stability. So the shoes dropped. I ordered them that night. They were delivered yesterday evening, and I did all of these workouts today to test them out. So I did plyometrics, lifting, as well as running indoor and outdoor. My running included a treadmill run, treadmill sprints, and an outdoor run. My lifts included conventional deadlifts, sumo deadlifts, and squats. And I also did box jumps, vertical jumps, and lateral side-to-side jumps in terms of plyometrics. Let's talk about the difference between running shoes, lifting shoes, and training shoes. So if you are an expert in this area, feel free to skip over to the next section. Exercise shoes can get confusing fast, so I'm going to break down what each type of shoe is good for and what the drawbacks are, and you can understand how training shoes fit in among lifting shoes and running shoes. Running shoes are thick, supportive, and cushy, and they have a larger heel-to-toe drop, so a little bit more of an angle there, in order to get your weight from your heel down into your toe, because that's good form for running. So the Lululemon running shoes have a 9.5mm drop, whereas these ones only have a 6mm drop. So you can see the running shoes are a little bit steeper than training shoes. So running shoes are built for heel to toe movement, as well as cushion and support for your joints and your feet while you're hitting the ground. Now let's talk about lifting shoes. These are especially confusing because there are many different types of lifting shoes. So the first type we'll talk about are called risers. So those are shoes that have an elevated heel, but a very flat and firm sole. So these are often used for things like squats because you're able to have a little bit more ankle mobility and get into a deeper squat when your heel is elevated. The other type of weightlifting shoe, this is the more commonly used one, is just a totally flat shoe. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of people lifting in Vans or Converse or just some kind of flat sneaker. There are also deadlift slippers, which are usually have some kind of like Velcro straps across the top, and those are also just totally flat. So the totally flat shoes are often used for deadlifts because they help support proper form. The elevated heel riser weightlifting shoes are often used for squats, but you can't really swap them out for one or the other. So if you do end up getting that type of shoe, you can only use it for certain exercises. Otherwise, it won't help you with your form. A lot of people also, rather than wearing any shoes at all, they will deadlift in socks or barefoot. These shoes often also have wider toe boxes that allow your toes to kind of like splay out for extra grip and stability. Weightlifting shoes can be pricey and they aren't very versatile. So that is one thing to consider in terms of weightlifting shoes, is that usually they have a specific purpose, a specific exercise. So maybe if your goal is to get really, really good at squats, or you need them for a sport that you're working on, or whatever, then it makes sense there. But otherwise, it's not like you can take weightlifting shoes on a run. Training shoes are a hybrid of running shoes and lifting shoes that can be used for both lifting as well as running and jumping plyometric type movements. Since training shoes are a little bit flatter than running shoes, they're great for side-to-side movements because you have a little bit more ankle stability. Training shoes are good for cutting, jumping, stopping, moving direction really quickly. Training shoes are kind of like your all-in-one shoe. A lot of it kind of comes down to your personal mobility, your preferences, what feels comfortable to you. Now, there are some recommendations that I'll give just to avoid injury, but other than that, it does just kind of depend on your preferences. So in terms of preventing injury, you do not want to weightlift in running shoes. The reason is that in a lot of weightlifting movements, you want to keep your weight in your heels. Running shoes have a lot of cushion from the toe all the way to the heel, so you're just not quite as stable, and you do increase your risk of injury when you don't have a stable ground to lift on. Now, you can also cause problems if you run in lifting shoes. So you want a lot of cushion to protect your feet, to protect your arch of your foot, to protect your joints as you're running, and you also want that heel to toe drop to promote proper form while you're running. When you're running in a lifting shoe that is flat soled, it definitely does not help in any of those areas and can increase your your risk of injury. For most people, I think a training shoe is the perfect middle ground where you can use it for almost anything pretty successfully, and I think it's always good to invest in something that's very versatile until you get to a point where you want to make an investment for some specific goal. Let's talk about how the shoes performed in each of my tests. Let's start by talking about squats. So normally, just for reference, I do squat in totally flat Vans, so I did quite enjoy having a little bit of heel elevation, and I did notice that it gave me more ankle mobility, and I was able to kind of get lower in my squat without reaching a stopping point in my ankle mobility, so that was super nice. I found them to be a little bit less stable than completely flat Vans, which makes sense, but they were still quite stable and I did feel comfortable in them. I did actually get to a pretty high weight, at least for me, and honestly, I don't want to say it felt effortless because that wasn't true, but it felt so much easier when you have a little bit of heel raise to get into a low squat comfortably. So at this point in my test, I was in love with the shoes and really enjoying them. So for squatting, I give them a 10 out of 10. So the next thing I did was conventional deadlifts. So that means that your feet are about hip width apart. So for deadlifts, I found these shoes to be a little bit sketchy, which was expected because as we just talked about, for deadlifts, you want a flatter shoe. So that heel raise is actually going to make it a little bit more difficult for you. So as expected, these performed a little bit worse for deadlifts. I found myself kind of like leaning forward and putting my weight into my toes more, and you definitely want to keep your weight in your heels. I'm pretty experienced with deadlifts. I've been doing them for a long time, so I was able to still maintain proper form, pushing my hips back, hinging at my hips, and kind of keeping my weight in my heels, but it was something I had to really actively think about as I was doing the movement because the toe drop in the shoe was kind of like pushing me forward a little bit. When you're in flat shoes, you do feel a little bit more in your glutes, so if that is your goal, you want to just really think about that mind to muscle connection and keep your form really good, hinging at the hips, sticking your glutes back and kind of like sitting back into the movement. The higher I went with weight, the more I kind of felt that pull forward. So here are some solutions. The first is that you can just take these shoes off while you're deadlifting and keep them on for the rest of your workout. Another option is to just wear Vans or Converse or some kind of like stable other shoe, maybe a shoe that you already have in your wardrobe on days that you're going to deadlift. The last option is to just not go too crazy, not go too high with your weight, and keep your form top of mind the whole time that you're doing it. And I think if you do one of those things, then these shoes are still a good investment for lifting. In terms of sumo deadlifts, which are essentially just like a wider leg stance version of a deadlift, I found that when I had my feet really turned out or straight on, I really struggled to keep my weight back in my heels, and I felt myself being pulled forward a lot. But when I had them in kind of like a comfortable middle turnout amount, it was a little bit easier. So I would recommend if you're going to do sumo deadlifts or that kind of movement with these shoes, it's really important to find the right turnout level that feels comfortable for you and allows you to keep your weight back in your heels and keep that pressure off of your lower back. I would feel comfortable sumo deadlifting in these shoes. They aren't my favorite, but I think I would be willing to use them because they are so great for so many other things and they're so versatile in the rest of my workout. I would be okay kind of giving up a little bit of stability in the deadlift portion of my workout. If deadlifts was the only thing I was doing that day at the gym, this isn't the shoe that I would pick. Let's talk about plyometrics and jumping. So when I was doing vertical jumps and box jumps, I found that these performed really well. So they're obviously, sorry, I just kicked my camera. When I was doing box jumps and vertical jumps, I found that these performed really well. So normally I would do this kind of thing in running shoes, and of course running shoes are a lot cushier, so when you're hitting the ground and having that impact, they're more comfortable than a training shoe. But these shoes, one thing I really enjoyed about them was just the ankle stability. With that extra cushion you get in a running shoe, you do lose some stability, and I really appreciated feeling very stable when I was landing, jumping off of the box, or hitting the ground after a jump. And because I do kind of struggle with ankle stability sometimes, and it is something that makes me really nervous, I would probably choose this shoe over a running shoe for that kind of thing moving forward. Lateral jumping, which is side to side jumping, this is where this shoe really shined in my opinion. I think it totally lived up to Lululemon's description on their website. They felt cushy, supportive, my ankles felt really strong, and they felt held in place. Normally in a running shoe or in like Vans or something really flat, my ankles do feel a little bit sketchy doing those like side to side more athletic movements. This shoe did very well in that area, and I think if you're doing mostly that kind of workout, this shoe would be a great pick for you. Now let's talk about running. So I don't think these shoes are specifically designed for running. I think they're designed for mostly plyometrics and lifting, but I wanted to push these shoes to their limit and see what they could do and how they would perform with running. So first thing I did was take them for a run on a treadmill. So I found that these were not as cushy, of course, as a running shoe, but still pretty comfortable, and I didn't have any joint pain, shin pain, hip pain, nothing like that. So they performed okay for like a moderate intensity run on a treadmill. Treadmill sprints is where it was really not fine. So this is where I started to feel a lot of pain in my knees, in my shins, and even the arches and bottoms of my feet, as well as like in my hips. So I think if you're gonna be sprinting a lot on the treadmill, you definitely just want shoes that'll give you a little bit more cushion and support, and these shoes just would not do it for me. So if I was gonna be doing any more than like 1 or 2 sprints on the treadmill that day, or like even not on the treadmill, just any more than 1 or 2 sprints in my workout, I would bring a pair of running shoes specifically. I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing that kind of thing in these shoes. Let's talk about the outdoor run on pavement. So I did an outdoor run as well, and I think these shoes actually performed pretty well. So when I first started out on the run, I was feeling a little bit of pain in my shin and my knees, and just really noticing that these were not my normal Nike running shoes that have a lot of cushion and a lot of toe drop. Because the heels were the cushiest part of the shoe, I found myself putting my weight into my heels, and that's when I really started to feel it in my joints and in my legs. So to remedy that, I started to kind of really focus on my form and have that slight forward lean with my body, as well as putting weight onto my toes and kind of rolling my heel onto my toe. I found that they were a lot more comfortable, and once I started to kind of like get into it with good form and maintain that form for a little bit, they did start to get more and more comfortable. If I was in a pinch, if I was going on vacation and just wanted to take one shoe, I would definitely feel comfortable running in these, but I would not buy them as a running shoe. I think over 5K, you would really start to feel it in like the arch of your foot, as well as maybe in your shins, just kind of in your joints, not having that extra cushion. So if you want a running shoe, I really, really recommend protecting yourself, your joints, your feet, and getting a shoe that is designed specifically for running and not using this shoe. But if you're in a pinch, you're doing a short distance, I think this shoe is totally fine. At least in my experience, it was fine. Another thing I noticed when I was outside in outdoor lighting is that this shoe is not completely white. These parts of the shoe, like the rubbery parts, are a little bit more of a cream tone. So if you're looking for an all white shoe, this is the closest you can get with this shoe. And I think it's still really beautiful, but it does show up a little bit more on the cream side. So this like base, the fabric part is white, and then all the rubber parts are a little bit more cream, just so you know. Okay, let's talk about whether these shoes are worth the money. So I think if you are on the fence about this, because there is a 30-day guarantee and you can return them in any condition, I would say go for it. I think they're a very versatile shoe. I think they lean more on the lifting and plyometric side than the running side. So I would think about what % of your workouts are each type. If more than half the time you're doing running, I think you should go for a running shoe specifically and just lift in maybe Converse or Vans or something like that that you happen to have at home. But if more than half of your workouts are strength training, lifting, plyometric type stuff, I think these shoes would be an awesome pick. I think this shoe is great for a couple of different groups of people. I think the first group this shoe would be good for is beginners. So if you want to invest in a shoe that's going to help you do any kind of workout, maybe you're still figuring out what styles of workouts you enjoy. You want to have a shoe that you can take on a run, jump around with, do some HIIT workouts with, and lift with, then this is definitely a great option. I think this is also great for intermediate and advanced trainers whose workouts lean on the more lifting plyometric side. Maybe you have a different pair of running shoes that you can use, or you just don't run often. Maybe you get your cardio in by biking or doing something where you're not like hitting your feet onto the ground. I think comparing these to the Vans that I was using before, one thing I really appreciate is that it just has a much wider toe box, so I'm not feeling like my pinky toe gets squished under all of my other toes, which is quite uncomfortable. So it's just really nice to have a shoe that's designed specifically for what you're doing. So I think if you have the money and want to make the investment, getting this shoe would be a really awesome way to kind of like take your training to the next level. Personally, I'm not wearing deadlift slippers to brunch, so I do like that these are like pretty cute and you could probably wear them out beyond the gym. Overall, I was quite impressed. I wasn't sure if I was going to keep these, but I think I definitely will after testing them out with all of these workouts. I really love them, and who would have thought Lululemon is making shoes? Like, what's going on? If you have any questions, if there's anything I didn't address in the video that you would like to know, please leave a comment down below and I'd be happy to answer honestly. If you have any video requests, I would love to hear those as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. If you'd like to see more from my channel, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time.